FPL Game Week 3 final decisions. In today's video, we're going to go through all those final things you are trying to decide on going into the Game Week 3 deadline. We're going to answer some of those key questions. We're going to have a look at some injury updates. We'll have a look at a wildcard draft for any of you considering playing it this week. And then we'll have a look at my team and what I plan on doing as a final team selection going into Game Week 3. What is up, everyone? FPL Harry here. Before we dive in, 1,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you are new around here as well. And today we're having a look at those final decisions. We're going to dive straight in. The first thing to remember, of course, is the transfer window shuts this evening at 11 o'clock UK time. If you are still to make transfers that might be impacted by some potential last-minute signings, if you're looking to buy Nicholas Jackson, if Chelsea bring in a striker, something like that, please wait on all your transfers today until much closer to the end of the transfer window, because you never know when something crazy might happen. A final bid comes in for the player you're looking to buy, even if they look so secure, or potentially the club you are looking to buy a player from might sign another player who plays in a similar position that might potentially impact your transfer plan. So do wait until the end of the transfer window. Next up is I got a lot of questions, particularly around Alexander Isak this week, about what to do with him. He did play midweek on Wednesday, and there was a little bit of a rumour that he got a slight knock, but he did play on and he's absolutely fine. So in terms of injury, there's no real reason to go and sell him. He hasn't performed massively well so far this season. He picked up an assist in game week 1, picked up an assist in the cup game last night, and of course blanked in game week 2. It's not been the best start to the season for them, and if you wanted to move for an Ollie Watkins this week, I wouldn't massively be against that. I absolutely wouldn't do it for a -4 though. I think if you're looking to sell Isak for a hit, I would just wait a week and look to do it next week. There are also a lot of transfers next week that can benefit from selling Isak. So, for example, Isak to João Pedro, who plays Ipswich at home in game week 4, would free up a lot of money to buy Mo Salah, to buy Cole Palmer, to buy Bukayo Saka, Erling Haaland, if that's a player that you want, you don't own in your team at the moment. That's actually what I'm considering doing going into game week 4 over the international break. We'll be selling Isak down to João Pedro and maybe doing Saka to Palmer or Saka to Mo Salah for the couple of games that Arsenal have that are difficult, whilst Chelsea and Liverpool have a pretty good couple of games. So Isak is a hold for me this week unless you want to move sideways to Watkins, but I do think going into game week 4, he will be a sell for a lot of people. Then having a look at the Campsy ranking, actually for me at number 1, I've gone with Cole Palmer. Chelsea, I do expect to score goals, and he is a midfielder. Of course, the extra point for a goal. He's on penalties, and then, yeah, he has great assist threat, as we saw in game week 2, picking up 3 assists for Madueke. Next up is Erling Haaland, pretty close to going up there with Cole Palmer. If you don't have Cole Palmer, I do expect Haaland to be the most captain player going into game week 3. We then move down a little bit. We've got Bukayo Saka against Brighton in at number 3. We're then putting Mo Salah in at number 4, going away to Manchester United. And for the first time, I do think we've got Ollie Watkins in the Campsy ranking. Of course, there might be some lower owned players that you might be considering captaining, like a Brian and Burmo going up against Southampton or something like that. But in terms of high ownership players, this is the top 5 that we've got for game week 3. Next up, having a look at some key injury news. So, of course, at time recording on Thursday afternoon, a lot of the press conference will take place on Friday, but unfortunately I'm traveling on Friday afternoon, so I can't record after the press conferences. So if you are looking for some players, do keep up to date with how the press conference goes. I will of course post on Instagram and Twitter if there is any significant breaking news from those press conferences, but we're not massively expecting anything going into game week 3. The first one is Matty Cash. It doesn't seem like a major thing, but it has a slight knock-on effect on the rest of the Aston Villa defence. He is expected to be out for 4 weeks, or for about a month, which might mean he misses 3 or 4 game weeks of FPL because, of course, we've got an international break. This is likely mean that 4 million of Jelkovic will come in and play right back while they've got easier fixtures. Now, in the Champions League or when they play harder games, there is always a chance that Konza plays at right back and they fill in another centre-back in Konza's position. So buying Jelkovic isn't completely foolproof, isn't watertight that he's going to play every single game, but it is likely, given that Cash has been subbed off in both game weeks 1 and 2, and 4 million of Jelkovic came on in his place in both of those games, that you might get a few minutes out of him. Next up is Dominic Solanke, of course, missed game week 2. He hasn't been pictured back in training going into game week 3 either, so it is expected that he will miss the game against Newcastle, and he might be back in game week 4 after the international break. When Ange did talk about the injury going into game week 2, he did specify and did mention the international break and the fact that that can help with recovery. So it is expected that that might be when we see him return after the international break in game week 4. And then the final one wasn't quite an injury, but Lewis Hall got dropped in game week 2. He then started in the cup on Wednesday night and didn't have a fantastic game there. I do expect him to come back in, probably his first choice still at left back, but there is a bit of doubt there. I imagine most of you with Lewis Hall are not planning on playing him anyway because it is Spurs at home this week where I don't expect many points for him. It is a bit of a red flag given they do have Kelly. They are still linked with Mark Guéhi as a centre-back, which could put Burn out to left back. At the moment, if you still own him, I wouldn't priority sell him, but I do think there is a bit of risk going forward and there's no guarantee he does start in Game Week 3. Next up, we're having a look at a few players, the key players to buy across the different positions going into Game Week 3. In goal, we're starting off with David Raya, number 1, just because of how good Arsenal look defensively. Martinez is in number 2 if you want to save 0.5 and actually get some better fixtures over the next few weeks. Flecken looks like a pretty solid option with the fixtures they've got coming up. Southampton at home this week and pretty good long-term fixtures as well. Along with that, Nottingham Forest don't look like they're going to sign a goalkeeper in this transfer window. Of course, wait for the end of the window before officially deciding that, but Sells is in at number 4. And then we've actually gone with Muric of Ipswich in at number 5. They look pretty good. Well, they look okay defensively. And they have really nice run of fixtures. And he will make some decent amount of saves as well. To be honest, I'd probably be looking at the top 3, though, if I was looking to buy a goalkeeper this week. Moving into defence, we have got Trent Alexander-Arnold in at number 1. I do like some of the other Liverpool fenders in the likes of Virgil van Dijk and in the likes of Andy Robertson as well, who I am being asked quite a lot about. Andy Robertson is in at number 4 if you are looking for a cheaper way into the Liverpool defence for the next few games, which do look really nice. We have Gabriel or Saliba in as the number 2 pick. If I was buying now or a wild card now, I probably would just go for Saliba for the long term, slightly safer terms of minutes. We then have Robinson, who was very popular in Game Week 2 in at number 3. And then a cheap option in Pau Torres in at number 5 because of how good the Aston Villa fixtures look from this week out. Going into the midfielders, of course, Palmer was the best cash option for me this week, so he is in at number 1. Diogo Jota is in at number 2 because I do expect him to keep his place and he's looked really good recently. We do move down the budget a little bit as we go into the final 3. So Eze, I still think is great. Of course, the Chelsea fixture this week is not massively ideal, but I do still like him as an option. I'm hoping he drops in price again on Thursday evening, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen. We then got the 2 cheap options that most people selling in Nkunku are going to in Smith Rowe and in Rodgers. I expect them both to do pretty well over the next few weeks given their fixtures. And then up front, of course, no Erling Haaland. If you want to buy Haaland, he's a good buy, but we're not putting Haaland and Salah in these lists just because they are the most highly owned players and it's not very, easy for me just to say to you, oh, buy Haaland and Salah. So we're looking at a few of the others. I've actually gone to put Ollie Watkins in at number 1, given how good their fixtures are. I know there's a slight concern of his minutes over the past few weeks, but he is in at number 1. Havertz in at number 2. I do still like him as an option, and Jesus isn't fit at the moment, so minutes are reliable up front. Muniz of Fulham in at number 3. Again, didn't score in game weeks 1 or 2, but has had more shots in the box this season than any other player. Visa in at number 4 because I do like Brentford's fixtures, and it does look like Ivan Toney will not be at the club next year. And then João Pedro in at number 5. Next week, João Pedro may even be top 1 or top 2 because of how good their next couple of fixtures are. So if you are looking for a cheap forward, I would just go with João Pedro, and you can just bench him this week and bring him in from game week 4 onwards. A quick look at a wildcard draft, and if I was wildcarding this week, I actually would go without Erling Haaland. I know he's been fantastic. He scored 4 goals in the opening 2 games, but Salah is more important for captaincy. Palmer, and then I've gone with Bukayo Saka in there as well. So there was no Erling Haaland in there, and I know some of you weren't like that. And actually, as a Haaland owner, it's very interesting for me to put a Haaland wildcard draft together. Well, a wildcard draft together that doesn't have Erling Haaland in it. In goal, we're going with David Raya with a 4.0 Valdemarsson on the bench. He actually saved a penalty in the cup the other day. I don't expect him to come in, but there's always a possibility. We're doubling up on Arsenal with Saliba. We've also got Trent. 2 4.5s who were my top defenders to buy with Robinson, and then with Pau Torres over Konza just for the passing ability. And then Greaves at Ipswich is the cheap 4 million option. Slightly over Johnson just because of better attacking threat from set pieces and stuff like that. Into midfield, we have, as I said, we've gone with Salah, we've gone with Palmer, we've gone with Bukayo Saka, we've also gone with Rodgers, and we've gone with Smith Rowe as well. And then up front, of course, there is no room for Erling Haaland. So we've gone with João Pedro, who you can bench this week. We've then gone with Visa of Brentford. And then finally, it's going to be Ollie Watkins of Aston Villa. I'm pretty certain that pretty much everyone watching this video can afford it. If you can't afford this draft because you've lost so much team value early on, something like a Trent to a Robertson is a very simple and straightforward way to go and free up a bit of money. You could also do a Visa to an Adam Armstrong or something like that as well. And then wrapping up, having a look at my team. So just to timestamp this, I'm recording at 5 o'clock on Thursday. At time of recording, Nkunku is not expected to drop in price tonight, and Eze is predicted to drop in price again. Now, you watching this on Friday morning will know whether these things have happened or not. And if it gets too close to the drop on Thursday evening and Nkunku is predicted to drop in price, I might end up selling him before that drop. But at time recording, I don't plan on making a transfer on Thursday evening. Of course, I will post it on Instagram, Twitter if I do decide to make that transfer before Friday evening. So having a look at what I potentially can do, I still think if Eze drops and Nkunku doesn't, that is the most likely transfer that I will make this week. I then look at transfers going into game week 4, where it will allow me to still do Saka and Isak out for João Pedro and probably Mo Salah, or it could be Cole Palmer in that position. The only other potential thing that I look at that I might potentially want to do is go and buy Ollie Watkins in place of João Pedro. So if I was to go for Ollie Watkins and Cole Palmer, I wouldn't be able to afford Eze, which is where someone like a Minte comes in. There's also an ability for me this week to actually roll my transfer and take the second price drop on Nkunku and take those 3 free transfers into the international break and make those 3 moves of Nkunku out, Saka out, and probably Isak out, and do a slight bit more of a restructure rather than trying to force a transfer this week. So I do still think that Eze is number 1, but there is part of me that says maybe I just take the price drops that I've already got, maybe take one more, go into the international break and slightly restructure going into the Salah fixtures, maybe look at João Pedro, and then a potential other midfielder in there, like Eze, who does play against Leicester next week. So yeah, I'm not 100% certain what I'm going to do. I'm a little bit all over the place with my transfer this week because of that early Nkunku price drop and the fact that Eze just hasn't followed suit. Hopefully you're watching this and Eze has dropped and I can easily make that sideways switch, but I'm not certain it's going to happen given it's been predicted for 4 nights in a row, and now Nkunku is very close to dropping in price again. So as I say, this is how we're lining up. Even if Nkunku stays, I'm pretty certain that I'll bench him this week anyway, just because I'm not certain of minutes, and Smith Rowe and Rodgers look like they're pretty certain for minutes. Nkunku is the only transfer I'm pretty certain I'll make this week if I decide to make one, but I'm more and more increasingly just thinking maybe I roll and then I can make 3 transfers over the international break, buy Eze anyway, buy Salah, and buy João Pedro with 3 free transfers. And just to wrap up, unfortunately, I'm away this weekend for my mum's 60th birthday, so there's unlikely to be a deadline stream. If I get fast enough Wi-Fi, which is the bit of the issue, the speed isn't fast enough. These videos are taking about 4 hours to upload compared to the usual 20 minutes. Then I might do one from my phone, might try and get one out. But if you do need a deadline stream to answer any final questions, Oscar and Ross, FPL Focal and FPL Raptor, you've seen me do videos with them before. They are more than equipped to help you out with those final decisions, and we'll be back for game week 4. So don't go to them forever. Watch them for one weekend and then come back to the FPL Harry streams on game week 4 and onwards. I will post if I decide and get a way that I can finally do someone, but it does look unlikely at the moment. I'll post my team on all the socials before the deadline, of course, as well, depending on what I do decide to do as well. So apologies for this. We'll be back for game week 4. I do hate missing a stream. I hope it's okay. Enjoy Ross and Oscar if you go and watch their streams as well. If you have any questions about your team that aren't answered in these final decisions videos, drop it in the comment section down below. 1,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you're new around here, and I'll be back again very soon.